Please rise for the playing of the national anthem. Everett Clover, and Auden Batt, representing the middle school student lighthouse team, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for your service.
You may be seated. I would like to welcome everyone to our Veterans Day Assembly, and thank you so much for attending. I would also like to thank the middle school student lighthouse team for doing the pledge, the high school band for playing the national anthem, and Mr. German especially for more to come from the band and choir. I would also like to thank the student body for allowing me to speak this morning on your behalf. Today we gather to celebrate and honor a group of individuals whose sacrifices have shaped the very freedoms we enjoy every day, our veterans. Veterans Day is not just another holiday. It's a day of remembrance, a day to express our deepest gratitude to those that have served in the military, who have answered the call to protect our country, our rights, and our way of life. As we stand here today, we must remember that the freedom that we often take for granted comes at a cost. The sacrifices of men and women who gave up so much, sometimes everything, to defend the values that we hold dear. For many of us, it's hard to fully understand what it means to serve in the military. We don't always see what happens behind the scenes. We may not fully grasp the challenges, the struggles, or the moments of bravery and courage that our veterans experience during their service. But it's important that we try. It's important that we make an effort to learn about their experiences. Whether that means talking to veterans we know, reading about the history of our armed forces, or simply taking a moment today to reflect on what their service means. In every generation, Americans have answered the call to duty. Whether in times of war or peace, whether on foreign soil or here at home, our veterans have stood ready to defend our country, even when they didn't know what the future may hold. And each one of them, from the past to the present, has given something precious. Their time, their safety, their health, and in some cases, their lives. Today, we honor those who served in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. We honor those who fought in battles that changed the course of history. From World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. We honor those who served during times of peace and those who served during times of conflict. We honor veterans of every background and every branch of service. But Veterans Day is also a reminder that we are not just honoring the past. We are honoring the present and the future. Veterans Day reminds us that the work of those who served doesn't stop when they return home. Many veterans continue to serve their communities, whether through public service such as teaching, or simply being leaders who show the rest of us what it means to live with courage, honor, and integrity. As students, you may not know yet how you can serve, but take it from those who have worn the uniform. Service comes in many forms. You don't have to join the military to serve your country. You can serve it by being a good citizen, by standing up for what's right, by showing respect for others, and by working hard to make the world a better place. So today, let's pause and give thanks to our veterans. Let us say thank you, not just with words, but through our actions. Let us live our lives in a way that honors the sacrifices that they have made. And let us remember that freedom is never free. It is paid for by the service of brave men and women who believe in something bigger than themselves. As we leave here today, let's not just remember our veterans in this one moment. Let us carry their courage, their sacrifices, and their commitment with us through the rest of every day. Let us live lives worthy of the freedom that they have given. To all of our veterans, past and present, thank you. And thank you all for allowing me to speak here this morning on behalf of the Clearwater R-1 School District. Thank you so much. I would now like to welcome Mr. Philip Baker, who represents our American Legion. Mr. Baker has served for over 40 years in the Legion. Mr. Baker is a retired 20-year Army veteran. Now, with the highest regard, I present to you Mr. Philip Baker.
Thank you so much for allowing me the privilege of being your speaker again this year. I was thinking about it on the way here this morning, and I think this is my 10th year. And I really look forward to it every year. There's some proud moments that everybody has, inspiring moments. I know I was proud to be in the service. I know I was proud to be in the American Legion. And I'm really proud to come here and mentor to our youth. And I didn't think that was so important to me until I walked into Town and Country one day, and I noticed that a lot of the graduates from here, they hire a lot of teens, some now in their 20s, and they always see my military hat and say, "Thank you for your service." And I thought to myself, boy, that's really nice of them. I asked Jeff one day, who's the manager there, "Do you instruct your people to say, thank you for your service?" He said, "Oh, no. They're doing it entirely on their own." And I think a lot of it comes right here from these assemblies where the school, teaches us to respect veterans. And I thank all of you that have thanked a veteran in the past, because it means a lot to us. But I digress. I thank you so much. Welcome to today's ceremony. Thank you for attending. I'm honored to be speaking to you today on such an important occasion. We're here today to honor our service members and remember their sacrifices that they've made and the courage it took to defend honor, duty, and country. You know, every one of us, when you're on active duty, whether you're drafted or enlisted, a 2-year hitch or a career soldier, stateside or in a war zone, we all look forward to coming home. Clearwater High School has hosted these Veterans Day appreciation breakfasts and assemblies for many years. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but it's like coming home to a hero's welcome. I'd like to start by giving them all a round of applause from us, please. And let's not forget about the women in uniform. They didn't carry an expensive purse. They carried a 45-pound rucksack, an M16 rifle, canteens, and their living supplies. While the other gals shopped with their girlfriends, they cleaned their rifles, packed their bags, slept on the ground in bad weather, and had to sleep alongside their battle buddies in peacetime and combat tours. When you wore heels, they wore combat boots. Instead of the makeup that you wear on your face to make yourself look pretty, they painted your face with camouflage for protection. Don't forget about the women in uniform. It's important for us to recognize and celebrate our heroes and heroes. Now, I'd also like to ask a family member of any service member to stand. We know you have lived through difficult times and often taken a heavy load to keep the home fires burning. Thank you for what you've done. Anybody has a member of the service, please stand. In past or present? Wow. A lot of them. Great. Fantastic. Thank you much. The service members we honor today came from all walks of life, but they shared one basic fundamental. They possessed courage, pride, determination, selfishness, dedication to duty, and integrity. All the qualities needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. Many of them didn't ask to leave their homes to fight on distant battlelands. Many didn't even volunteer. They didn't go to war because they loved fighting. They were called to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They were ordinary people who accepted the responsibility and responded in an extraordinary way in extremely hard times. They rose to the nation's call because they wanted to protect the nation, which had given us and them so much. We're here today to honor our heroes, to remember their achievements, their courage, and their dedication, and to say thank you for their sacrifices. We stand amid patriots and family and friends of those who have already nobly served, added their names to the monuments, and named buildings after them, to honor them for their bravery, but nothing can replace the hole left behind of a fallen service member, and no number of medals and ribbons can comfort the ones left behind. Today, people throughout the country will gather to remember, to honor, to pay gratitude to those who have served our country. Our gathering is just one of many, a small spark in the flame of pride that burns across the nation today and every day. While those who died are also remembered on Veterans Day, Veterans Day is a day set aside to thank and honor all those who served on our blade, in the military, in wartime, or peacetime. In fact, Veterans Day is largely intended to thank the living, to acknowledge their contributions to our national security, and to underscore the fact that those who served, not only those who died, have sacrificed and done their duty. We must always remember that each veteran represents an oath taken that includes a willingness to die where their country is called upon. We must never forget why we have and why we need our military. Our armed forces exist solely to ensure our nation is safe, so that every one of us can sleep soundly at night, knowing that we have guardians at the gate. Tragically, the effort to make America and the world safer and defend freedom around the world doesn't go without enormous cost to the nation in terms of lost lives, and those who bear the scars and the wounds of war, and their families who must bear this loss. The American Legion, as well as Clearwater Schools, is dedicated to remembering the legacy of all veterans, because what these men and women have done for us matters to America. It matters to the people overseas who were liberated from tyranny due to the sacrifice of the military members, from defeating communism, fascism, and imperialism, to liberating slaves, keeping the peace during the Cold War, and battling terrorism today. Veterans have accomplished remarkable things throughout our nation's history, and this is why we hold veterans in such high esteem. Ladies, gentlemen, teachers and students, veterans have preserved the country that we all love so much. America's military men and women risk life and limb every day so that we can be free. The true soldier fights not because of what is in front of him, but what loves what is behind him. From Bunker Hill to Baghdad, there's always been a select group of Americans willing to fight and possibly die for a greater cause than their own self-preservation. For most, it might be the first time in a long time that they had a purpose. It wasn't about money or rank or prestige. It was about raising the flag. We do what we do because no one else can or will do it. We must never forget why we have and why we need our military. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. Our flag does not fly because the wind moves it. It flies with the last breath of each soldier who died protecting it. While fewer than 10% of Americans can claim the honorable distinction of being a military veteran, this special group often provides the vital services that enable our country and our community to survive. Whether it's a school teacher, construction worker, or a first responder, military veterans take their mission seriously. They vote in higher percentages than non-veterans, and they're more likely to volunteer in their communities. In short, veterans make our communities better. It has often been said that without our veterans, Americans would be speaking Russian, German, or perhaps Japanese. Regardless of which view of alternative history you take, we do know that without our veterans, America would not be America. The outpouring of respect for veterans in the schools and businesses in Wayne County is heartwarming to our vets, and deservedly so. Thank you so much to the students that put so much heart into this program, and the teachers and faculty that assist and guide them. Educators as well as veterans organizations realize that the youth of today will be our leaders of tomorrow. To instill patriotism in them is a commendable virtue and will remain in their hearts for a lifetime. Undoubtedly, you students in the audience today will choose to serve our society in many ways. Many of you are serving Clearwater right now in various clubs and organizations available to you in school, which serve the school and each other, and in some cases the community. You can serve by expanding your education after high school and returning home to your community as a professional, or by attending a trade school and coming back skilled in one of the various crafts. Each of you will find your own path and will cherish to your country by joining one of the armed forces, perhaps. Someday down the road, you might find yourself in this very school being recognized and honored for your service to this country. Remember this, after I leave today, if you didn't get anything else from this message, sometimes we take for granted our everyday privileges. We owe our freedom and quality of our lives to our veterans. It's a debt we can never pay back, but we can pay forward. Remember when you see a veteran in daily lives, all that might be needed is a simple thank you, directed to the veteran for his or her sacrifice. This nation will remain a land of the free only as long as it's home of the brave. If you want to thank a soldier or veteran, be kind to the America we're fighting for. There's a great adage that if you don't thank everybody instead of thanking somebody, you'll end up thanking nobody. If you haven't made a practice of doing this, I hope you'll consider it. Do it to change somebody's life, and I promise it will change yours as well. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of our nation's veterans. One of the most important missions in my life has been helping my fellow veterans to find ways to continue to live a life of dignity, purpose, and meaning when they return home. People often ask me, how should we honor our veterans? The simple answer, live their values, follow their example of service and sacrifice. The greatest way that we can honor our veterans is by expressing our gratitude. Some people live an entire lifetime and wonder if they made a difference. In the world of veterans, they don't have that problem. God bless you all for being here. God bless America, and God bless our men and women in uniform, past, present, and future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I would now like to welcome to the stage up here on front Miss Georgia Eaton to welcome you and share a moment of appreciation on behalf of the student body.
Good morning. I'd like to start off by thanking Mr. McFadden and the Clearwater School District for giving me the opportunity to speak on this important day. I would also like to thank all the veterans in front of me today, those currently out serving our country, and just as importantly, and most definitely not forgotten, all the veterans from the past. This day is intended to honor and thank the veterans for their service and acknowledge the commitment, dedication, and sacrifices they have put forward. Since I obviously do not have firsthand experience in the military, today I would like to focus more on the families of men and women in the military, because that is something I do have experience with. My dad served this country for 20 years. I was 12 when he retired. Less than a year later, my oldest brother, Jackson, joined the military and is still currently serving. He's now deployed in Poland, hopefully returning home in January. I have never known a time in my 17 years without someone in my family serving our country. Everyone's story coming from a military family is different and is usually pretty long, but I'm going to try and keep mine as short as possible. But if you know me, you know once I get going, it's hard for me to stop, so please bear with me. My dad's first deployment was to Iraq from March of 2003 to February of 2004. Jackson was just 10 months old when he left, and my mom was pregnant with my second brother, Jordan, who was born during this deployment. Flash forward to my dad's second deployment, also to Iraq, from March of 2007 to June of 2008. I was born during this deployment. My dad's next deployment was to South Korea from May of 2013 to May of 2014. And his last deployment was to Afghanistan from March of 2018 to December of 2018. Although this was his shortest deployment, it was definitely the hardest on me. I can't speak for the rest of my family, but for me it was the most difficult, and I think that's just because I was finally old enough to really comprehend what was going on. During this time, we had also just moved to Piedmont, one of the 8 moves I experienced, and we were living with my grandpa Steve while building our forever home. The adjustment of moving from military-based schools to Clearwater was definitely the biggest change. Moving from school to school during my younger years was hard, but it was also one of those things where you knew you weren't the only one experiencing the challenge of moving. Moving here, everyone had grown up together since preschool or even before, so it was definitely more overwhelming. Throughout life, the moving, the deployments, and the absence of my father never crossed my mind as out of the normal. Now leading a more stereotypical life, I see the major sacrifices and all of the extraordinary things my father and all other veterans have done. Seeing these commitments and sacrifices from an outside point of view, after being on the inside for so long, definitely opens your eyes. All in all, my entire life has in some way been affected by the military. This has been a blessing and a curse. Countless Christmases, Easters, Thanksgivings, family reunions, school achievements, athletic achievements, and birthdays missed, but I will forever be grateful to say that I grew up in a military family. It taught me to never take for granted the time you have with those you love, the friends you make throughout the years, and the privilege we have to live in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgia. You did a fantastic job. Give her one more round of applause. I would now like to welcome Mr. Kyle Mayberry to recognize the individual veterans here this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for coming today. We appreciate your service. Veterans, as I call your name, you may stand and be seated afterwards. Audience, please hold your applause until we are done with recognizing all the veterans. Thank you for letting me do this, Mr. McFadden. This is an honor to be up here to talk to you folks today. Our first veteran is Tim Sheets, Navy, 1986 to 1990. Gerald Fisher, Navy, 1966 to 1972. Gary Hewitt, 1966 to 1970, Air Force. Doug Ray, 1977 to 1990, U.S. Air Force and Missouri National Guard. Alan Fleege, 1970 to 1974, Air Force. Craig Shear, Navy, 1965 to 1968. Jim Hutchinson, 1970 to 1980, Air Force. Amber Webb, 1982 to 1986, U.S. Navy. James Collins, 1994 to 2018, Air Force. Roger Rayfield, 1965 to 1968, Navy. Kurt Ray, 1977 to 1995, Air Force. Hayden Williams, Army, 2021 to current. Bill Long, 1989 to 1993, Air Force. Joe Lance, 1966 to 1972, Air Force. Charles Brooks, 1966 to 1970, Marine Corps. Jim Rube, Army, 1966 to 1968. Jim McFadden, Army, 1966 to 1968. Jerry Watson, 1954 to 1960, Air Force. George Bullock, 1968 to 1973, Navy. Cole Ezel, 2013 to 2016, Army. Ann Adams, Air Force, 1969 to 1971. Larry Borner, 1970 to 1973, Army. David Waits, 1962 to 1964, Army. Kim Serrano, Navy, 1997 to 2001. Randy Mell, Navy, 1993 to 2016. Matthew D'Amico, Air Force, 2016-2020. Brian Tutterow, 1972-1993, Navy. Ben Thompson, 1998-2007, Army National Guard. Gary Buckley, Army, 1952-1954. Delbert Moore, Air Force, 1967-1987. Harry Willahan, Army, 1966-1968. Joe Moss, Army, 1984-1986. Jim Hawkins, Navy, 1961-1965. Kenny Elrod, Army, 1960-1966. Matt Hahn, 2007-2013, Army. David Lawson, 1990-1994, Army. Don Henson, Air Force, 1987-1991. Nelson Howard, Air Force, 1954-1958. Jim Shear, 1951-54, National Guard, Navy, 1954-1958. Chris Bullock, Marine Corps, 1966-1972. Steve Eaton, 1999-2019, Army. Gary Shear, 1972-1975, Navy, 1979-1986, National Guard. Jeff Serrano, 1983-2004, Navy. Philip Baker, Army, 1965-1992. Dennis Hovis, Army, 1966-1969. J.T. Mann, Army, 1961-1963. Tim Marler, Air Force, 1985-1987. Matt Stoner, Army, 1997-2011. Matt Winter, Army, 2016 and current. John Kellick, Air Force, 1981-1982. Let's give these fine men and women a round of applause. Thank you.
I would now like to present Mr. German and the band for Patriotic Bits and Pieces. Thank you so much, Mr. German and the band. I also want to give a big thank you to Mrs. Amanda Clark, High School Library Media Specialist, for making our slideshow. At this point in our ceremony, I'd like to introduce Miss Audrey Prophet to recognize the wars and conflicts as groups.
The United States has been involved in multiple wars and conflicts over the past century. Veterans, please stand or wave when I read the name and description of the war or conflict you served in. You may be seated after I've read through each description. World War II. World War II was a global military conflict that involved most of the world's nations, eventually forming two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. It was the most widespread war in history, with more than 100 million military personnel mobilized, sparked by significant events involving the mass death of civilians, including the Holocaust and the only use of nuclear weapons in warfare thus far. It was the deadliest conflict in human history, resulting in an estimated 50 to 70 million fatalities. More than 16 million Americans served in World War II, liberating Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific from the threat of tyranny. The Cold War. The Cold War is a term commonly used to refer to a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union following World War II. The term Cold War is used because there was no large-scale fighting directly between the two superpowers. Military personnel fought to maintain global peace and avoid a nuclear war. The Korean War. The Korean War was a conflict that took place during the Cold War between North Korea and South Korea. Allies of South Korea included the United States and its United Nations allies. The 6.8 million Americans that served in the Korean War protected South Korea from falling into the hands of communist North Korea, China, and the Soviet Union. Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a conflict between North Vietnam and South Vietnam during the Cold War. The United States deployed troops to protect South Vietnam from the threat of communist expansion in Southeast Asia. More than 8.7 million Americans defended South Vietnam in what became known as America's largest war. Persian Gulf War. The Gulf War was a conflict between the United States and its UN allies against Iraq. More than 700,000 Americans served during the Gulf War in operations that included Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm, and Operation Desert Saber. War in Afghanistan. Operation Enduring Freedom is the official name used for the war in Afghanistan, together with 3 smaller military actions under the umbrella term of the Global War on Terror. The recent conflict was made up of an all-volunteer force, many of whom chose to serve following the September 11th attacks in 2001. Over 800,000 Americans served in the war in Afghanistan. War in Iraq. The Iraq War was a conflict in Iraq that began with the invasion of the country by a United States-led coalition that overthrew the Iraqi government of Saddam Hussein. Much of the next decade, as insurgency emerged to oppose the coalition forces and the post-invasion Iraqi government, over 100 million Americans served in the war in Iraq. Peacetime. Peace is something many of us take for granted. It can be easy to forget those who served in times of peace, but their service should not be overlooked. Those who serve during times of peace make the necessary sacrifices to prevent the list I have just read from being longer and guarantee our safety every day. Thank you to all. You may be seated.
I would now like to introduce Georgia Eaton, Isaac Thompson, Grace Allen, and Parker Sheldon for the sharing of the fallen soldiers' table.
A sad part of military etiquette is honoring service members who have fallen Remembering them honors their sacrifice and that of their families. It also underscores the importance of commitment to duty made by the living. One beautiful, thoughtful way to honor those who have died is a fallen soldier table. Each element on the table symbolizes something specific. The table. A table set for one is small, symbolizing the fragile state of one isolated prisoner. The table is round, to represent everlasting concern on the part of the survivors for their missing loved ones. The tablecloth. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. A single rose. A single rose in a vase signifies the blood that many have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our cherished United States of America. This rose also reminds us of our beloved family and friends and missing comrades who keep the faith while awaiting their return. The yellow ribbon. A yellow ribbon around the vase represents the yellow ribbon worn on the lapels of thousands who demand, with unyielding determination, a proper accounting of their comrades who are not among us today. A slice of lemon. A single slice of lemon on a bread plate represents the bitter fate of the missing. Salt. Salt sprinkled on the bread plate is symbolic of the countless fallen tears of families as they await their loved ones' return. The inverted glass. This glass inverted on the table represents the fact that the missing and fallen cannot partake of the food and drink set at the table. The Bible. The Bible represents spiritual strength and faith, a source of sustainability to those lost from our country. A lit candle. The lit candle is reminiscent of the light of hope that lives in our hearts to illuminate the way home, away from their captors and into the arms of a grateful nation. An empty chair. An empty chair represents the missing and fallen that cannot be present. And as we set this table today, let us remember and never forget those who paid the ultimate sacrifice.
I invite everyone to stand up and join me in a moment of silence, followed by the playing of taps. We do this in honor of those veterans who have gone before us and those who have given their life in the line of our country. Please remain standing until the conclusion of taps. may be seated. I'd now like to direct your attention to Mr. German once again and the chamber choir as they sing Amazing Grace. Thank you, Mr. German and the high school choir. I want to give a bunch of thank yous to the people who worked on the backside of this assembly to make it such a success. Mrs. Johnson and her whole crew for breakfast this morning. You guys did a phenomenal job. There's a reason I do my speech at the beginning, because by the time I get to this part, it's tough. Thank you all so much for coming. My life was impacted by my grandpa, who served in Korea and lived with the scars for the rest of his life. I am who I am because of him. Thank you all so much for coming. This concludes our ceremony. Thank you, everybody, for making this such a success. It's a super important day for me, and I love having you guys here. I hope to see you all back here next year, and God bless you all. Veterans, please, you may leave first. Everybody else, wait for the veterans to file out before we start making our way out. Thank you all again so much for making this a success.